All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for being a part of our L&D Recharge event. The first two sessions today have been pretty amazing. We had Mick kind of to give us a little bit of an inspirational boost to start the event out. And then, gosh, Alan had so much great practical information in that last one. I know that recording for his session is going to get watched a whole bunch of times. And I'm sure that this one for this session is going to get watched quite a bit too, because I think it's going to be really, really interesting. And it's an exciting format that we're gonna try here with TLDC. And if this works out, we can do it more, because I personally do love these types of things, panels reviewing assets or content or anything like that. And in this case, resumes and portfolios. So let's start out. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just introduce our first guest for this one before we go into our panelists. And it's Maryam Abdulkadir. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Well Excellent. Done. All right. Maryam, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, of course. So I have quite a diverse work history. My interest in instructional design started when I was working in Nigeria during the Boko Haram insurgency, and we were teaching primary school students in Hausa and English to help improve their literacy and numeracy rates, which we did. It went from 50% to 99% within the first year. So that was a big accomplishment. And so when I was working in those situations, I started becoming more interested in working with different age groups, people of different backgrounds, some people who've experienced trauma, and just seeing how different learning styles can impact them. And so once I left university, that's basically been my passion and what I tend to do. I have worked in what we call National Citizenship Service in the UK. So I helped teach. I was basically involved with migrants who had come to the UK from Yemen and seeing how we can guide them in some resources. Wow. And also facilitating large groups. So that's basically just a summary of what I've done in the past.
Excellent.
Yeah, now I'm looking to return to it.
Yeah, and thank you so much for generously submitting and sharing with us. And yeah, we'll get into this in just a bit. I want to make sure I have some time to introduce the panel. So, Christine, why don't we start with you? Maybe just introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi. So great to meet you again. As Louis said, thanks for putting this out there for us and everyone else. My name is Christine Thomas. I am the owner of CK Digital Learning Solutions, and I've been in the corporate learning and development industry for about 20 years. But I own my own business. I guess I got brave right around COVID. So about 2019, I took the leap and never looked back. So nice to meet you all.
Great. Thanks, Christine. Thanks for being on our panel. Tania, I've never met you before, but would love to hear about you.
I am a career coach, and I have a master's in higher education leadership. So I have dedicated my whole career to adult learners in a higher education setting, specifically professional development. So I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. And Rebecca, I'm sure everybody knows you, but
probably not everybody. But my name is Rebecca Prejean. I am the CEO and founder of EB Graphics and Consulting. I have been in learning and development for we're going on 13 years, but focus on accessible multimedia design, strategy, all the things, accessibility, videos, all the fun stuff. So really excited to kind of talk to some folks and see what we can do to get you on your next steps.
Excellent. Thanks, Rebecca. And Alison. Quick.
Hi, I'm Alison. I'm a learning and development consultant currently, previously a learning experience designer. So kind of doing the work that folks are looking to move into here in the current day. And then I was the vice president for Teaching a Path to L&D, which we've kind of started to sunset a little bit as Sarah and I have both gotten pretty busy, but we do still like to dedicate time to kind of helping people transition into L&D, though it has become harder in the current market, I would say, than when I transitioned a few years back.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alison. All right, Maryam. So would you like us to start with your portfolio or your resume?
Let's start with portfolio.
Okay, let's start with the portfolio. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And we'll get you going. There we go. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. All right, Maryam. Is there anything before we start looking at it? Is there anything you want to say about anything you want to mention about your portfolio first?
Yes. So basically, because I'm new to learning design in this sense, trying to re-enter the industry, I created 2 portfolio projects to see that I'm on the right path. So this isn't like a final effort. I did try my best, but I would like to see where I could fill in the gaps more. That's what these portfolio projects are for.
Excellent. So is it okay if I paste a link to your portfolio in the chat so that folks can take a look? Oh, so generous of
Yes.
you. This would actually freak me out, but so glad that you're willing.
You are not that brave, huh?
Yeah. All right, let's start with Alison. A question from you. Let's see. Let's go ahead and get going.
Yeah, I thought, I will say, I thought both of your application materials, your resume and your portfolio, when I looked at them, Maryam, had a lot of like voice and personality. So I have a little bit of a sense from these, but I would really like to hear kind of like your elevator pitch, or what I would really condense that to make it less confusing, because you might not have that. It's just like, what are you looking to do in the world of learning and development? Like, if you could design your ideal job, what are you looking to do and how do you fit it? So that we can best tailor our advice towards where you want to go.
Of course. So I got into reading Megan Torrance books on agile and instructional design and data analysis, and that's where I'd like to veer towards. I don't mind e-learning development, but then what I've noticed is that it takes quite a lot of like talent to do that very efficiently. So I really want to focus on those 2, project management and data analysis. Those are the main ones. And storyboarding. I don't know, please correct me if I'm wrong. I've been told that nowadays in the industry, you'd have to really know how to do both, but I was hoping to focus more on the former.
I will say I don't know the market where you are. So I do think the UK market is a little bit different than the American market. I don't know in that respect, but in some respects, I know it certainly is. I do think in the American corporate market, it is common that people look for what is called full stack development, which means you can design and develop and kind of do those other pieces, the analysis and the evaluation, when they care to do them along the way. But thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really interesting kind of perspective. I would say one of the things that I would say that surprises me, because I do think your portfolio is very e-learning focused. And I think that's probably because that's what you've been practicing. So having read the 2, I think one of the comments I had on the resume was like, oh, this is project management. You should highlight that. So it's interesting to hear you say that, and then to look at the assets here. So that would be my first piece of kind of advice, and kind of review, and I'll kind of hand it over to the other panelists and Luis again to look deeper into this portfolio.
Excellent. Okay. How about Rebecca? Anything about the portfolio that you want to address?
Yes. I wrote notes because I just can't do it on the fly.
Same.
But first thing I want to say, I'm really interested in like your background and your information. Like, your background in general is awesome. It's amazing. And so for me, when I was reviewing the portfolios, I looked at it from the perspective of if I was going to hire somebody as a freelancer for my business. And hearing that you want to do analytics and data and all of these things, I wouldn't have guessed that from your portfolio. That initial piece on that homepage where you're giving all that great information, what I really wanted to see was, what are you trying to tell me in just layman's terms? Like, pretty much, what are you trying to get me to buy as a business owner? Because at the end of the day, all these portfolios, all of these things, your resume, you're selling yourself. Whether you view it as having your own business or you view it as just being a consultant, you're selling yourself, and yourself is your brand. So it's like, what are you trying to get me, this business owner, to buy? So I would have liked to have seen that a little bit more clear on that homepage. Just let's be real, folks. You got about 100 people right now applying for the same or similar jobs. And so this may be the only time that you really get to say, hey, here's what I can do for you and what I can do for your business and how I can bring you guys to the next level. So I would say to kind of tailor parts of your portfolio for that reason. And then for the actual e-learning portion, like Alison mentioned, it's really e-learning focused. You can still talk about some of that analytics part, though, if you give background on the pieces that you have there. So maybe talking about some of the background related to why you did this project. What problem were they trying to solve? You know, what were the results if you know that information? But being able to do that shows me two things. Shows me a few really. It shows me that maybe you know how to solve a problem, a specific problem that maybe I have. Also shows me that you can write in general, which is a huge skill that people want out of learning and developers nowadays. That's the way that it is. And again, it can draw back to that part that you want to do about analytics, if you have the numbers and you have outcomes and things like that. So I want you to think of it as, yes, right now what you have is e-learning focus, but when you start to put more things into your portfolio, start thinking about ways to draw the connections between what you can do, what you want to do, and make that work for you. Make it open up some additional doors that if I'm coming to look at your portfolio, maybe for whatever reason, right? I can see that, hey, she wrote about this, or she wrote about that, or she's saying this. Maybe I can use her for this other thing that I have. So I want you to really think of it as an opportunity and a gateway to get you a little bit even further down the road than what you might be thinking.
Love it. All right. So, Tania, what do you have any feedback at all?
Yeah, I had the same feedback for the resume and the portfolio, which is I was wondering what your L&D niche was when I looked at your portfolio. And so specifically, is it e-learning? Is it more content delivery, instructional design? Is it project management? So I really appreciate hearing from you. There's a really strong story here from your background, but there is something lost in translation in relation to your qualifications and how your qualifications translate to work that you could do today that could really benefit customers who are looking for you specifically. So that level of detail in relation to your qualifications.
Tania, is it okay if I pull up Maryam's resume? Is there anything specific on there?
Yes, I did. I wrote some notes, so let me pull them up right now. Oh yeah. So in your summary statement, I wanted to learn more exactly, I wanted to read more clearly what you're looking for in your next role. So I appreciate this mention of a specific problem that you've solved, but what types of problems are you looking to solve, and what technologies are you going to use to solve those problems? From the perspective of an engineer, and this is the same in the UK as in the US, they're looking at the top third of your resume as sort of a summary and the deciding factor for whether or not they'll keep reading the rest of your resume. So what you choose to put in that summary, you're kind of saying this is the most relevant. These are the most relevant details that you should be looking for in my resume. And so by giving one specific example, you're kind of limiting yourself to that specifically. And I also noticed, there's some little formatting things. You had inconsistent formatting with your bullet points. So just make sure that the formatting is consistent throughout. And then I had one suggestion for the way that you wrote one of your bullet points. So you had written that as a learning experience designer, you championed use of technology to teach 20,000 children literacy. I would like to know more about what technology solutions you implemented in order to improve literacy, And can you quantify your impact? So I would like to know, what methodologies did you use? Because that's a lot of children. So I have to assume that there was technology involved. And so I'd like to know what software, what platforms, and more. Yeah, so more of those skills that I would see in a job description, I would want to see in the resume as well.
Excellent. Thank you,
Can I
Tania.
quickly interject? I just wanted to ask this as a general question for the panel as well. Your advice has been really helpful so far, and I don't need to speak for everyone, but I think sometimes when you read job descriptions as well, there's specific expectations that they have of you in the market, like knowing articulate storyline. How do you not get too lost in that and still kind of really represent your individual talent? Because I think that's kind of the issue from the feedback I'm hearing. That's the issue that I'm falling into. Not like having expectations that I know people have of me, but then my experience isn't quite matching, or it's not being explained in a way that's actually helpful.
That's great. Christine, any chance you can take that one?
Yeah, for sure. And it is a great question. I think it lines up with what we're seeing versus what we're hearing and the contradiction in those two things. So even in the summary, Maryam, when I went and looked, I noticed I picked up on content writer, but I didn't see a whole lot of that in the resume. And I didn't hear you say that is one of the things that you're passionate about, right? So when I think about the learning and development process, you're really interested, your passion is in the beginning on, the learning needs analysis and really digging in on identifying the issues and the challenges. And then there's that in between for the development. And at the end, there's the evaluation, where again, really lines up with your passion about what kind of performance did we see. Let's be able to show proof that our efforts were effective, and then put numbers to that to prove performance. So even in just the brief time speaking to you, I know that's where you're passionate, but that's not the reflection of what we see in either the resume or your portfolio, but it's your story. So because, like Rebecca said too, you have an amazing story, but you also need to remember that it has to direct. If I'm a business owner, I'm going to do what's in it for me, right? So what do you bring to the table? And as amazing as your story is and impactful as it's been, I need to see how that's going to benefit me as an employer, right? So I did have a couple of specifics for you. So since we're in the resume, you have fantastic bullets about some of the things that you were able to do and accomplish, but nothing quantitative or data driven. So I would say there's one in your senior manager piece where you mentioned fundraising, right? Mm-hmm. How much fundraising were you able to achieve, and what was the benefit and the result for that business? So a lot of times, and this is a very common mistake, is we write our resume to kind of reflect like the duties and responsibilities that we had versus the outcome and the deliverable and the benefit that we gave the business that we worked for. And as a business owner, that's what interests me, is what am I going to get by our partnership together, other than the cool things that you're telling me, which it's an amazing diverse background, and the things that you bring to the table I wouldn't know unless we had this chance to talk. And to be fair, based on what you're probably applying for, I see freelance instructional designer. That's not actually what your passion is. You're really into performance management, data analytics, content writing. Those are very different skill sets. So I think just staying true to your passion versus trying to submit to get the position is going to help you actually secure something that you're going to find joy in versus just kind of landing a gig, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much for your response. And I do think it's quite true, an issue that I had. Like you said, it's one thing to say that you like data analysis, but another thing for you to actually judge your resume by your own standards. My follow-up question would be, should I change like the job title I'm looking for? Because that's actually something I'm very interested in, what job titles actually mean in this industry.
Yeah, it is. And the more the industry grows and the more flooded it has become since COVID and the transition of so many folks from education into the industry, the more nuances you're going to find. So, now there's learning strategists, there's instructional, developers, then there's designers, and all of those things not only mean different things, but they pay differently as well. So finding out and really understanding what those definitions are in the market, I think is very important. But to your benefit, you have that passion and skill set on the front end. So putting in words, because everything's going to go through AI before it even hits anybody anymore. So putting in those keywords, ADDIE, learning needs analysis, those are the words that will trigger for where you have the passion. And that is that upfront analytics, and then at the end doing that evaluation piece. So while you've been practicing and really good at the development, which is the actual production of the content, I get the sense that it's not where your heart is. So I would probably, in a designer, you're doing more storyboarding. You're, kind of focusing a lot on the concepts, like a learning experience, even a strategist would also do. So I would say take a step back and really look at some of those keyword searches for, if you want to stay on content writing, even that is a lot different than the data and analytics, where I feel like that's where your heart is, right? So you really want to know, what the performance is like, where are the gap analysis. That's a very unique and valuable skill set. So if you can rephrase to be able to show that's your experience, then that's an appeal that's going to hit versus someone who's looking for an instructional designer. I can find an instructional designer, but somebody who's specializes in the analytical component and gap analysis, to me, brings a completely different skill set to the table. And the pay is going to be, I would feel, different as well.
I love it. Christine, thank you so much. I do have to mention, since we have 5 guests, we have 4 more guests after this one. I have to kind of cut it a little bit short. But
I just want to speak to that a tiny bit, because I think it's going to affect a lot of people. I think job titles are a thing that frustrates a lot of job seekers in this market. I don't think you can go by job titles. I think you have to really carefully read those descriptions, because I've seen instructional designer jobs that my job is not technically titled instructional designer now, but it is more focused on like analytics and stuff like that than what I was doing previously. And I've seen other instructional designer jobs that are just labeled that and are like sometimes program manager, or sometimes like I think that you have to really read the description and try to guess in some cases. But I also think that's why it's helpful to have your resume be your niche, because sometimes they're just boilerplating their thing, even though they have something in their head. So they may have an analytics based instructional designer in their head, and you may not even know it. So sometimes you're just trying to like showcase yourself so that somebody can find what they're looking for in the stack.
Love it.
Having gone through a recent job search, that was my strategy, rather than trying to map to every single job and change myself. It was like, here's what I am. Is this what you're looking for?
Excellent. All right, great. Maryam, thank you so much. Thanks for being a guest on this one. I really appreciate it. Hopefully the information was helpful for you. Now, I do want to mention, when we first came up with this, and I really wasn't able to spend as much time as I would like to try to organize something, but if anyone, if any of the panelists or any of our other community members are interested in helping out other entry-level instructional designers, or people that are, going through some career challenges right now and want to use the tables in the lounge or anything like that, reach out to me. I can try to connect you to folks. I know Rebecca is already meeting with somebody else at some point soon. So just let me know. And there were so many people that wanted to help in this effort. And that's why we're basically here, why TLDC is here. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and hide you from the stage, Maryam, and then we're going to ask
Thank you.
Edinam to come up. Thank you. Let's see here. All right, Edinam, are you there? I'm going to pull up your stuff while we're looking.
Hello, everyone.
There you are. Hi, Edinam. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you all.
Okay, and I think that what we had was you just had a portfolio you wanted reviewed. So let me pull that up for everybody. All right, so let me close this and share here. And here it is. All right, let's start with Rebecca on this one.
Hi, Edinam. I took a look at the portfolio. A couple of things that I want to just mention, and I'll probably say this for everybody across the board. Your portfolio is an extension of you, and it is the first time that somebody gets to see you. They won't talk to you, obviously. This is going to be it. It's the first presentation. So what I would have liked to have seen from this site, especially figuring out on the next page where you actually have your interaction, that you use like Adobe Premiere and all of these other Adobe products. For me, that says that you are tech savvy. So something I would want to see is this portfolio site to be a bit more built out and like a bit more just meaty. Like I felt like I was missing that a little bit. And also make sure that all of your links work. On that home page, there's like an image or something, I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, that may looks like it's broken or it's not connecting. And for some people, that could be an automatic no. Especially if I'm looking at that next page and it says that you use Adobe Premiere. For me, I'm like, if you're tech savvy enough for that, I'm not understanding the disconnect there. So I would definitely urge and recommend that you kind of look at that, figure out why it's broken, kind of thing. No, not a critique or a criticism, literally telling you what I think as a business person looking for people, essentially. So on the actual portfolio side for the interaction, I loved it. It was nice. It was clean, all things that I look for. One thing I would have wanted to see, and I'll probably say this across the board, good background information. Why did you create it? How did you get this? Is it something you just did for fun? Is it for a client? That kind of thing. Christine mentioned it a little while ago, and I would encourage everybody who's listening to this to really focus on the WIFM. What's in it for me? Because as a business owner, that's what it is. We can create all the things, but what a business owner wants to see is that you can come in and create results and create impact. So creating something that looks great is one thing, but I need to know without talking to you that you can fix problems and that you can bring revenue into my place, and we can make money together. Like that is the true purpose and point. It sounds terrible when you say it out loud, but it is the truth. So what I would want to see on that portfolio page is a much more in-depth explanation of why this thing exists. Was it a project? Were you tasked with it? When did you create it? Because that's also a thing for me in particular.
Yeah.
The way you design like 5 years ago, like the way I designed 5 years ago is definitely not the way I design today. So if it's older work, I want to know that, because I'm like, okay, did you maybe progress since then? And also I would recommend adding maybe one or two other things too. That way they can see the depth and the breadth of your skills. Because if you're an Adobe creator like myself, you probably have a wealth of knowledge and skills. And people would want to see that if you're into developing. If you're not, then we need to have a whole nother conversation about what you want to do. But I think that you have really good skills and the portfolio has promise. It's just wanting to clean it up, make it a bit meatier, and say to people, this is me, this is who I am. Hire me, essentially. Give them a reason to hire you, is what I would say.
Excellent. Thank you. And Edinam, I neglected to ask you to just sort of talk a little bit about yourself, to introduce yourself to us.
Okay, so I'm Edinam. I'm actually from Accra, Ghana, and I am a recent graduate from university with a degree in information technology. So I'm an avid gamer, and honestly, the what pushed me to get into this particular project on my portfolio was my final year project in university. Right, it was a video game, so I thought I would create a lightweight version of it with storyline. So that was how come I got into this e-learning thing. Yeah, so
Excellent.
from the start, it was kind of I was doing it for fun from start, but I haven't. I've After that project, I've worked on other projects too, but I just haven't added them here. So I guess that's where the issue is.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Great. No, thank you. How about Tanya? Do you have any feedback on Edinam's portfolio?
I was just going to say, when I land on your page and I see a broken link, my first thought is not, okay. If my first impression of you was knowing that you had a background as a software engineer, I would think this person is a highly desirable, high value sort of candidate. But that's not the impression that I get when I land on a broken link. So just be really mindful of that first impression, because that then becomes your brand. And I know you didn't ask for a LinkedIn or a resume review, but I would say that that same principle extends to your LinkedIn. So your LinkedIn and your resume. So decide what you want to be branded for or be known for, and then make that a prominent feature of your landing page, your LinkedIn, and your resume.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks. Alison, any feedback?
Yeah, I thought I was happy to kind of see this statement that like Luis is showing right here. Like I could see this is what you want to do. And like I want to make gamified learning. I want to, and that comes from that IT background. I think if there is a game that this is based on that you made as a project, I might even share that as part of this project and say, like, this was my final project. We were making a game. I wanted to turn it into learning because I'm also passionate about learning. So here's like a sample that I had. And I think that can make for kind of a more interesting portfolio project when you have like things like that tell like a story and people get into it. So it doesn't look like everybody else's stuff. Not that the learning itself looks like everybody else's stuff, but the project kind of pitch of it with just like responsibilities and tools, it kind of blends into the general. But then when you tell that story, I'm like, that's a great opportunity to show what motivates you and those other skills to those technical skills. I do see the broken link that people are noting. And I would say, like, you know, I think you want to make sure your technical stuff is up to like speed with where your skills are, because that technical background is going to help you sell that gamification for the roles that have that are really interesting to you.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to paste Edinam's portfolio in chat here for Claire, and then Christine. Any feedback?
Yes, absolutely. So the thing that I love that I see is the bold statement. I am very passionate about gamified learning. That tells me right away where your heart is and where you want to be. So as a business owner, I would give this a look, especially if I have a project going on where we really kind of want to level up. But what I'm missing is any information that you have that IT background. So I agree with what Alison is saying is tell more of your story. You know, the fact that you've just gotten your degree and you finished and this was part of your final package. I think a lot of folks that are entering the industry are nervous about not having experience, but the pool is so vast. So a lot of business owners, God, Rebecca, I feel like you do. I hate hearing it out loud, but the reality is that I would almost prefer to have someone that doesn't have experience, that's only going to learn my way at a very reasonable rate, that comes with a great skill set and a passion for what I'm specifically looking for. So gamification may not be something that I I want to spend, that effort level on. But if I brought you on, Edinam, I could look at that and say, man, this is his jam. This is where he lives. This is what he loves to do. And he's going to give me his best effort. So along with the other feedback that you heard, I would go back to what Alison said and tell your true story, where you are, why you're passionate about it, and stick to what you love, because there is a niche, especially now, for gamification. Everybody's talking about it, and not everybody can do it. So if you can deliver on those results, you getting in the door is going to be a great advantage, because you led with what your passion was. So I would say just build on that, and then focus and bring the education part, because that is very valuable right now. And it's a nice alternative to not being able to share X number of years of experience. Don't think of that as a turnoff or a disadvantage. There are companies that are just as excited to hire somebody brand new that's willing to learn their way of doing things. And it would be a great stepping stone for you as well.
Nice.
Okay.
Excellent.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. All right, Edinam, what do you think? I'm going to move on to the next one, but I'd love to hear anything that's going through your head right now.
Right. Thank you so much for the reviews. I definitely have to work on my portfolio properly before. Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you
Edinam.
all very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let me go ahead and hide Edinam from the stage. This is great stuff. This is so exciting. I did mess up. June was actually supposed to be second. So let me bring June up now. I think I was looking at the wrong thing when I was clicking around. All right. So June has a portfolio and a resume. And I know June has attended other TLDC events. Thank you so much, June, for for helping support us. Let me go ahead and share. Do you want to start with your resume or portfolio first?
Let's start with resume, since Maryam did her portfolio first.
Got it. All right. So let's do that. All right. Can you all see that? Excellent. All right. Got it. All right. Let's start with Alison on this one.
So kind of having come off those two conversations, June, do you have, because yours was a resume that I had a lot of trouble trying to pinpoint what you wanted to do. So do you have a focus for what kind of instructional design roles, what kind of duties, what kind of focus you'd like to have?
That's part of the journey I've been on, is trying to figure out a niche, because it is so broad. And I do have a lot of passions, so it's hard to narrow it down. I do accessibility is really intriguing to me, coming from a teaching background and working with learners with special needs. I also like UX UI design and reviewing that. But I haven't narrowed down a focus quite yet. I just have a lot of
Those two things together, the two things that you just decided to highlight, along with the instructional design and kind of education background, would lean me towards what we might call learning experience designer, although people will call things whatever they want, like I said earlier, which is kind of that UX focused, the user experience, the learner experience. How do we reduce the friction? How do we make sure it's accessible to everybody? Maybe it's mobile friendly when it needs to be. That is a niche, and it is, I think, still a substantial one. That's going to mean a lot of e-learning development and a lot of material development, which I think is tied back to some of the stuff on your resume, but not others. And so that's where I would kind of I would take off some of the applications that only teachers use. I wouldn't put Go Math or IXL on a resume for corporate. And I would focus on what accessibility means if I'm going corporate in a corporate setting, or even higher ed, what CAG would kind of connect to, or accessibility compliance for federal government needs and things like that, that you can kind of connect back to what they need in terms of those passions. Because UX and accessibility are things everybody needs in learning. Sometimes they legally need it in learning, and they are fiddly things that a lot of people don't want to deal with. And so there are roles there for sure. But I would definitely kind of cut out then some of the more like teachery stuff that is like maybe more focused on keep the adult learning principles a little bit, but focus in on that like development niche that you want to do. And how can you show that was useful? Like I know on the resume, it says improved website usability and accessibility by 15%. But as somebody who like uses WCAG audits and stuff, I don't know what 15% means. And I did look at that project on your portfolio as well and got a little bit of a better sense. But I think kind of focusing on that and really honing the language on instances like that is going to be what catches somebody's attention if that's what they need. And putting in those accessibility terms that relate to the corporate ads or the higher ed job ads, which will be slightly different from each other. But I would just like use the job ad language for those things so that you can hit those keywords like I think Tania was talking about.
Love it. Excellent. So Tania, how about, would you like to offer some feedback? You could choose between either, I can switch tabs, I can go to portfolio or stay on the resume.
I had a couple of questions when I looked at the resume and the portfolio. And one thing I wasn't clear about from reading your experience is, are you a career switcher or are you an experienced learning designer? And the reason why that wasn't clear to me was because I can see that you were a teacher, but I can't tell from your job description if you were doing like professional development, L&D type stuff at iLead, or if you've reworked it to focus on those projects specifically. And this is an important distinction, I think, for employers to know, because they need to quantify how many years of relevant experience do you have. So when you say experienced educator and trainer, you can actually say like experienced educator with X years of training, X years of instructional design, X years of XYZ experience, so that somebody reading your resume could easily say, yes, no, they meet the minimum qualifications. So there's that. And then when I looked at your portfolio, I also was not sure under your projects, I wasn't sure if these were personal project. I mean, with the Long Beach project for the school district, I can see that was for a client, but I think it's also important to specify if this was a client project or if this was like an education-based project as like a portfolio building exercise.
Got it. Yeah, they were for my master's program, so I didn't put that in there specifically, but those are the samples I have. But I am working on more corporate facing samples that I could add to the portfolio.
I think it's great. I think it's totally fine to have. I mean,
okay.
It's valid to use projects that you made in your master's program. However, you do want to really emphasize that you have an understanding of the business needs of that hypothetical customer and what was the impact to the customer. This is something that I feel like gets left off in UX case studies, is that impact.
Wow, this is great stuff. Thank you. All right, let's see. Rebecca, have anything to add?
Yes, June is completely my kindred spirit. As somebody who, quite frankly, has many passions, I do all the things. And I did find myself in a place of, am I just a career switcher or am I just a jack of all trades? What am I? And it did take me a while to kind of just find my groove. My niche is accessibility. It is. So it is a niche. It is something you can have. I will say this. If you are like, I think I want to go down that path, I think I want that to be my jam, then anything that you have in your portfolio has to speak to that.
Right.
Which means you would need to go through and find the things that are not accessible in nature, because those are the first things my eyes were drawn to, just because it's what I do. And so I'm hearing you say all these wonderful things. I saw your resume, it has all these good stats. It has all this meat to it. But for me, the business owner, I'm like, I can't get past it because even though you have all that, it's just not connecting in that way. One thing I did like was that in your portfolio website, you had your experience. So I don't have to go look at 100 different things. I can see it all on your website. And if you're going to have it that way, I think that's great. You just want to make sure that you translate the highlights from your resume onto that website. Because if I don't go to your resume, I don't see all these extra things, right? I don't see all the nice outcomes and percentages. Kind of also in line with what Tania said, what I've said this entire time, make sure that you have background, make sure that you have outcomes and impact for every single thing that you put. And this is more of a blanket thing, when everybody is designing portfolio sites, it's great to have them. I think it's important to have them. It does a lot for you, but it can also be a detriment. Because if I'm looking at you for a job and you send me this link to your portfolio site and it either looks half done, not saying yours does, but I'm like, it either looks half done or it doesn't have a lot in it, it looks like an afterthought, that is the impression that you are leaving with me, your potential employer. And with the many people applying for the jobs, we've already talked about instructional designers right now are flooding the market. Transitioning teachers are flooding the market. If I've got all of that noise, I'm not going to be able to take the time to look and to dive deep into all the good things that you have. If what I come to that you sent me, that you provided me, is something that just isn't complete, if that makes sense.
No, totally.
So for you, I do think it kind of goes into which lane do you maybe want to stick in right now?
Right.
If you want to make it accessibility, great. There's a nice market for that at the moment. However, you have to make sure that whatever you create speaks to that. So kind of scrubbing through your things, making sure any thumbnails, maybe change those to icons. I noted that in particular because it was driving me nuts. Lovingly, it was driving me nuts. So maybe switching that, maybe just kind of going through. And that also could be a moment for you to kind of look through what some of those compliance things are. And become more familiar. So it's not a bad thing. I liked your portfolio for the most part. It's just these itty bitty things that are disconnected that you're going to want to kind of fix and link up so that if somebody comes to your stuff, they're like, okay, so I can see where this is. I can see where this might help me. I can see where this might lead us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
But now I was a complete job wanderer for years. It's fine. You work that.
I love it. Christina, what do you have to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So June, it's always tough to go last because everyone shares all the great feedback. But I think it is the underlying message is still ringing true. What you presented in your resume versus what we see in the portfolio there's no connective tissue. So it's kind of like I see one person in one and I see a different person in the other. And so when we say, make sure you list everything, you have to be able to really provide all the information. I loved that you had statistics and data on what you were able to do at the Long Beach School District. That was something that, we haven't really seen a whole lot of. So carrying that into your portfolio and demonstrating, these are the statistics that you shared. Show me what you used to do that, right? Because again, as you decide, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with not knowing who you want to be just yet, but showing something that connects with that data point is really beneficial for an employer to figure out how we can partner together. So I think that same thing, you have a lot of interests. But if I just were to look at your portfolio, I would also be a little like, I'm not really sure. It's a little disconnected. I'm seeing a lot of different things, and together, I don't think I have the full picture of what June can bring to the table.
Mhm.
So tell your full story. And I loved the advice that you got on, you're able to list the number of years as an educator. Again, the market is highly competitive right now. So use that to your advantage on what you were able to do, but pull those stats and tie it to a product. And you may learn a little bit more about what you like and what you don't like based on, who hits on your resume and or your portfolio. But to combine those two together, because again, I think the June that I saw on paper and then the one that I saw in the portfolio didn't quite match up for me. And I'd like to get a full picture. And I look and I'm like, man, master's degree, 10 years, like those are great things, right? But show me what you got out of it and what value it brings to the table. So yeah, anytime you can combine and consolidate into a single hit would be great. And then I think that was the other thing on your resume. You had a couple different positions at one particular place. And I think, Alison, you had said, like, they're going to look at the top third, right, of your paper, I'm pretty sure. So if you can condense, and even if you have different roles at the single place, just kind of condense that and list out those roles and make them stand out. But it'll still show the longevity and the commitment to a place, but it shortens what somebody's going to scroll through. And ultimately, they do want to look and see, what have you done? And then again, if I can get it all in your portfolio, I'm a visual learner. So I'm going to click on a portfolio. If there's a link, I'm immediately running to the portfolio. So I would recommend just spending the time on building that up and putting more of the meat and potatoes of who you are and what your interests are in there versus on, the piece of paper.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. I think my only question is, with the portfolio, with my education experience, I've heard several people say that hiring managers don't want to see like educational content if you're making that transition to instructional design. So I don't know if you guys wanted to speak to that.
I think I honestly wouldn't put topics related to education on your portfolio. I think it's fine to put the statistics on the resume of what you accomplished. There are a few projects on mine. So I said that, and then there's a few projects on mine that are related to education, but they are for training staff. So I wouldn't put like projects related to training students unless you're looking for like a math curriculum developer role and you're putting math stuff on there for that section of a portfolio, because that's one of the things you're seeking after. And I would separate those really clearly and make sure that's delineated. But I definitely would pick content options for your samples that fit the kind of setting you want to go into. So if you want to train in technology, for example, I would do tech tutorials, videos, simulations, etc. If you want to do like delivery, like you want to deliver virtual instructor-led training, I would do a sample of you doing that. And like samples, nobody's going to watch a 60-minute presentation. Like they're not going to watch the whole thing. So pull out snippets. So I would do that. And I would always work on making what you have on there as perfect as possible before moving on to, you don't need a lot of breadth because people don't have time to look at it. So, but you do need what you have to be as good and perfect. Perfect is the wrong word because then you get held up on it. But refining what you have, I think would help with the issue that I think Rebecca was talking about with like, oh, some things aren't as accessible and if accessibility is a focus, they should really be perfect. Spend the time taking the current examples and make them better rather than like going to the well and worrying about topics. I think you don't need the exact topic that people want, but I would stay away from topics that are more for kids if your audience is adults.
Wow.
Thank
Great
you.
stuff. June, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's fantastic that you're able to share this. I'm just so impressed with our panel. I'm like, oh my God, everybody knows so much. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, so June, I'm going to go ahead and hide you, and then we'll bring Megan up. So let's see here. Megan. All right. And hi, Megan.
Hi.
How about just tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. So I have been a middle school teacher for the last 10 years. I officially resigned. June 7th was my last day.
Wow.
Very happy. I want to do a career change into, first I was looking into learning and development, learned it's very, very broad. So I've narrowed down into more instructional design, which I'm also learning is very broad. But what interests me a lot is, especially during distance learning and COVID, was designing the learning modules for the kids to do at home independently. So that's the direction I think I'm wanting to go at this time.
All right. Well, let me go ahead, and I am going to share your resume so that, and that's what we just have for you. Don't have a portfolio for this one. And yeah, so Tania, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, I had quite a bit of not quite a bit, but really big thing to flag is that your resume is not ATS friendly. So when you apply for roles and you upload your resume into an application portal, your resume is going to feed into an applicant tracking system. And when your resume is not compatible with that, what's going to happen is you're going to end up having to type out all of the information that's already in your resume, like hundreds of times every time you apply for a job. So just to like save some time for yourself, and also to make sure that all of this information gets properly fed into the application, I would suggest making a plain text resume. So something that starts in Word or Google Docs, and then you download it into a PDF. So that's a small thing. Another thing that I noticed when I looked at your resume is that you seem to be really strong in the people-facing aspect, in like the delivery aspect. But then when I heard you speak, you said you're into the learning design. So with that being said, that's not the impression that I got when I read your profile summary. So that profile summary is, again, it's telling me the TLDR of your resume. So if designing learning experiences, if that's it for you, that's your focus, I'd love to see an example. I recently completed XYZ project for a edtech startup where we designed this, check it out, and then you can like link to it or something like that. So I'd like to read about some of your qualifications in instructional design right from the beginning. And then in your, it's a little bit hard for me to see, so I'm going to pull it up separately. Another thing, so when you talk about curriculum development, and so some things like backward design and ADDIE, these are kind of like things that are, it's almost like a given, like you should have an understanding of what that is if you're an instructor. So I want to read more about what tools are you utilizing to build curriculum. So you mentioned e-learning. So is it like Articulate 360? Is it HighSpot? Is it PowerPoint? What technologies are you using to design those courses? And yeah, so that is my feedback.
Thanks, Tania.
Mm-hmm.
Christine, what kind of feedback do you have?
Sure. So Megan, first, thanks and congratulations. I mean, you haven't even been in the market 30 days, so super exciting. Welcome to the world of L&D. My feedback to you, especially just getting started, I do see a little bit of a contradiction in what we're talking about, and again, how you're representing versus what is on paper. And it's okay, because I think there is there's that, conception out there of instructional designer kind of does it all. But even looking at your experience, you're a trainer. You're a trainer. And there is a great market right now for virtual training and being able to facilitate those types of experiences in a corporate setting. You don't have to stay in education. So until you're able to build and start working on the instructional design piece of it, I would get my foot in the door with what you're great at, which I anticipate in looking at what you've done is training. So start there. And a lot of places tend to, hire somebody for training. And then they're like, hey, listen, we've made changes. We've had a couple updates. Can you, do the updates to the PowerPoint presentations? Or it would be great if we had facilitator guides. So I think instead of overreaching, start with what you're great at and start with the training. And I think that, this is really also something that is a misconception. So curriculum design is more of a profession than a skill. And so I think, Tania, you were just saying, like, I want to see the tools, right? And it's okay if you don't have them, but lower that on your list and put teamwork, collaboration, trainer. What are the platforms that you train well in? Is it WebEx, Google, Teams, Zoom? And again, and this is just my perspective on how freshly new into the industry you are. Lead with your strengths and see where that takes you versus trying to find out and maybe just continuing to take the hits of not having the experience and getting into something you don't love. Just transition slow and do what you love. And there are a ton of opportunities to specifically focus on being a virtual trainer. It's a great way to start. So that would be my kind of overarching suggestion versus, kind of going through the bullets, etc.
Excellent. All right. And I just want to mention real quick, I know we're going over, but, I think this is just such a valuable session in so many ways. So, thanks everybody for sticking around. Rebecca, did we already? Oh, I can't remember. Sorry, just like, did you already go over this one or?
No.
No. Okay.
Okay. There's a lot going on, so it's fine. So Megan, first, as Christine said, congratulations. Welcome to the fold.
Thank you.
Lots of fun waiting for you. So there's a couple of ways that you could do this. In all honesty, I started off as a trainer. There's nothing wrong with it. You can start as a trainer. You've been a facilitator. There are a few things, though, that I'll say on your resume that would be good for a lot of learning and development roles, including design. Like I see that you mentioned the Kirkpatrick model in your resume. That's unique. There are plenty of people, plenty of corporate offices, government offices that use Kirkpatrick. A lot of people don't even know how to use it. They don't know anything about it. So what I would say when I was looking at your resume is, I want to see you tailor this more to truly being learning and development. And yet you're brand new, so I'm sure you haven't even had a chance to really scrub through this thing in a real way and do like a bunch of research and things like that. But what you have is a lot of strengths in learning and development. I just don't know if it's highlighted enough. Like the first thing I see is French teacher. By the way, I do speak French. So I'm loving it. But that's the first thing I saw. And so in my head, as I'm hearing you say the things you want to do, again, there's that disconnect that we've seen a few times throughout, where it's, I want to do this, I'm saying I want to do this, and I feel like I want to do this, but the resume doesn't tell me that. So just like we've talked about with people with portfolios, your resume has to speak to who you are and essentially what you want to be, even if you're not quite there yet. Essentially, you need to look at the things here in that first section, like Kirkpatrick, like the design, develop, synchronous modules, things like that. And you have to start leveraging that for your L&D. So putting a lot of that information into your profile info. so that that's one of the first things they see, and they can actually start to make that connection when they start to look at your resume. Because right now, the way it stands, like I said, I see trainer. Again, not knocking it, because there are absolute opportunities for it, and it's a great way to start if that's where you're like, well, maybe I want to take a look at that, like Christine said, because it's a strength. You can do that. There's nothing that says that you can't. If you're like, I want to go into that more instructional design vein, however, if that's really what you want to do, perfectly fine. But you've got to write that learning profile or that profile at the top so that it tells me or potential employer, okay, they have some chops and they have some background to do this, possibly that I can translate into a corporate or a startup. If I'm being honest with you, startups are a good place to start. They truly are. They're usually willing to take a chance when other people will not. And I say that coming from a startup background. They took a chance. So it's a good place to maybe look for your first few. But before you do that, you've got to start learning how to speak L&D speak instead of teacher speak, if that makes sense.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. That's great stuff. All right, Allison, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I think on this one, when I looked at your resume, Megan, I thought there was some mistranslation going on with some of the things just based on what I was guessing was happening. And Rebecca just spoke to that. I would say if you truly use the Kirkpatrick model, it didn't make sense to me in that bullet, like continuously assessed 150 students and identified achievement gaps just with Kirkpatrick's, because Kirkpatrick's does a bunch of other things. So I would align it to the level of Kirkpatrick's you were using there and like what the outcome was. Why were you doing that? And what did it do? What did those assessments kind of do to drive? And for teachers, when you're thinking about outcomes, if you haven't done staff development, if you've only done classroom teaching, start to think of it as like school grade. How did you move your students' performance and how did that move the school grade? Because school grade is money in schools, the way that profits are money in business. And that helped me kind of align some of those ideas. So like, how did the pass rates of French go up? Or how did the enrollment in French? Sometimes French doesn't get as much enrollment as Spanish. Did you drive more enrollment in your area? And did the programs grow that you owned? With the lacrosse team, you have some project management stuff there. How can you leverage that program? How did that program grow? Like, worked with a budget of $4,000. Okay, but what did you do with the budget of $4,000? Because I bet you did some impressive stuff, knowing what people do with sports budgets in schools, in some cases. So kind of thinking about it that way and getting deeper into understanding the terms that you're using and how they matter. And if you do want to go into that e-learning development, instructional design side, then you do need some tools. You need to put them on your resume, and you're probably going to need a portfolio. Not every job will need a portfolio, but if you want to design learning assets, I don't think anybody's really hiring folks today without samples. It doesn't necessarily need to be a website portfolio. There's other types of portfolios out there in the world. You don't have to keep a publicly online website all the time. And I know many people who don't. So I want to point that out too, that not everybody has to have a website. I keep a website because web design is one of my particular skill sets, but I advise a lot of other people like, hey, I've seen a beautiful one in Google Docs that Tim Slade sometimes shares that links out to the assets, and it was well designed, and it's, there's a lot of options out there, but you're going to have to share some samples if that's what you want to do. Trainer, you probably wouldn't have to share too many samples. Maybe a sample of you delivering something, possibly, maybe nothing. And then there's like kind of bridge roles like training specialist, or they may name them all different kinds of things, where it's like 70% trainer work and they also have you build some things. And those kinds of roles, looking for those kinds of duties, might align with what you're looking for and let you build skills without having to take a bunch of time to only build skills and be unemployed or like, sporadically employed and not quite get where you want. There's a lot of options, I guess, but you have to hone in on which path you're going or you'll get lost in the options.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison. Gosh, brilliant stuff. Let's see. Megan, any comments at all? Any questions?
Just on a resume, are you listing your references or is that for a different place? Don't list them. Okay. Perfect.
The only place I would say that you might is for a government job or higher ed in some cases, and you'll know those jobs because they'll say they want them.
Got it. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Megan. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hide you. And then thank you, Marisol, for being so patient. And let me do this here. And we're going to bring you back up on stage, show on stage. All right. Thank you, Marisol. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I had the privilege of time, so I wrote something. If you see me reading, that's what I'm doing. Because I'm so nervous. I'm like, shaking. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Marisol Perez. I'm currently a freelance instructional designer that is new to the field. My interest lies in the e-learning side of professional development and leadership training. My journey into this field was inspired by my time during my Master's of Education program, where I had the opportunity to collaborate closely with the Chief Diversity Officer. And recently, I had the privilege of working with a training and development team at a startup where I honed my skills by creating training modules for clients in the transportation sector. Overall, my passion lies in simplifying complex content to facilitate effective professional development. I'm excited to continue growing in this field, and thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. What would you like to start with? Should we start with your portfolio or your resume?
How are the panelists feeling? Want to start with less? Let your brain chill for a little bit, maybe?
I think the portfolio was, this was one that I thought was really interesting. So I would want to start with this one.
All righty, let's dive in.
Okay.
The reason I thought it was really interesting was because it was designed for mobile. And I noticed that and really liked that. So I think props, Marisol. That's actually like a challenge on my portfolio. Like it is okay on mobile, but it is not as good as I want it to be on mobile. And I loved that about yours. From a visual design UX perspective, the center aligned text is one of my pet peeves that was driving me a little bit crazy. So I would, that big body text left align some of it, and I would make it a little darker for readability in some cases, but I loved the UX of it. And I thought it was, I thought that was going to appeal to people. On both your resume and on here, I would tighten up your tools a little bit. Just because it's easy to get lost in the tools that you have. And one, I do have a question for you. You have Articulate Rise 360 and you have Adobe Captivate, but you don't know how to use Storyline. Is that correct, or is that just
I'm in the process of learning Storyline. It's a bit more complicated than Rise.
But you know Captivate. You know regular Captivate, not Charm, like old school Captivate?
You mean the one that they just updated?
No, the other one.
I know the old one.
Then you can learn. Then you can put Storyline on your resume. I will tell you can put Storyline on your resume as somebody who uses it daily. Because if you can use old school Adobe Captivate, you can learn Articulate Storyline in like a month.
Okay, the one that crashes every time.
Well, then maybe you're trying to use it on a Mac, and that's not your problem. That's the software. But the features of it, it's harder to go from Storyline to Captivate. If you're going from Captivate to Storyline, or if you have any web design background, I think you're the one who knows Python and stuff like that too. You're fine. You can do Storyline. It'll only be easier. It'll be like using Captivate, but much easier, assuming you're using it on a PC where it doesn't crash.
Got it. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Let's see. Tania, how about you?
I kind of want to be like no notes, but I agree with the UX things. There are some like really small things in terms of like readability, but I thought all of your samples were really great, like tight, great examples, really good for the short brain span, or for really considerate of the hiring managers and recruiters reviewing this, because you chose very short form content to put on your portfolio, which I thought was great. In terms of your resume, I would add some of those additional skills that you've used, like Alison said. And I was wondering, with your role as instructional design, so with your consulting work, could you tell us more about what types of clients you're working with, what types of trainings you're conducting, who are the stakeholders. So like, I think it would be important if somebody's looking to hire you for client-based work to know who your client is.
Yeah. As of right now, I have not been the most successful with my freelance. The fun part of it is where I've created learning for my friends. So they work in HR and they needed help with like understanding implicit bias. So I created a training for that. That also came from my higher education time that I could just like transition over. And then I do have one client that is like an old coworker from platform science that she's like, can you just like edit this video for me real quick? Just do a little something on the side. But that's it right now. I'm still growing in the space.
That's awesome. So my suggestion to you would be, instead of the job description you have of what you provide as a consultant, you write like project A, and then you give a description of the project B, and you give a description. This is how UX designers design their resumes. And because this is like project-based work where you're being evaluated based on the work you can do, then this resume should be specific to your work rather than a vague job description.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, welcome.
Rebecca, would you like to look at the portfolio or the resume?
You know me, I'm all about the visuals. So I'm going to go with the portfolio every time.
Right.
So here's what I'll say. I liked it overall. The things that I mention are just because I'm in like that accessibility space, and I'm also, my eyesight's not great. So I would say I like the overall look. I do agree with Alison about the center text. Go ahead and left justify a lot of that, or left align it, because it's going to be easier to read. The other issue that I'm having is, again, the text color. It blends in so much with that white, and then you have that really light background, even some of that button stuff that you have at the top, like about in portfolio. The way that reads, that will never be accessible. And so I want everybody to think of it this way. I talk a lot about accessibility for people in general, but I want you to think that you might also have employers, human resources folks, anybody that looks at your portfolio that may actually need it to be accessible. So by making it like this type of situation, you're also cutting out some people that could potentially employ you, whether they want you for accessibility or not. So definitely want to be mindful of those kinds of things, just because it's very hard to read right now. The things that I found on yours, like I like the fact that there's objectives for all of the learning things that you have. Again, I'm about outcomes. So if you have any information on outcomes, any additional background stuff, that's always a bonus. I did like the fact that, like, at least that first one that I saw, I think most of my, well, yeah, it was the first one. You had it in like a YouTube video link. So it's something I can kind of watch, go back and do all the good things with. So I did like that. Overall, I was happy. I would just say to go through and add some more of your tools, as Alison said, because I also use old school Adobe Captivate, like Dinosaur Captivate. If you can learn Adobe Captivate from back in the day, you can learn Storyline, let me tell you. So go ahead and get all of that under your belt. And then that way you don't have to worry about it. For you and your skill set, it will probably be much easier than you think. I promise you that. So I would say definitely focus on that kind of stuff. But even though you're just coming in, you have a lot of good skills to draw from, quite frankly. So it's really just making some really good connections, kind of tidying up the portfolio a little bit, so that when I'm going through and looking for it and looking at it, I can be like, okay, this is a solid folk person I want to hire, kind of thing.
Thank you so much.
Love it. Love it. All right, Christine, we'll let you wrap it up.
Okay, so I think there's one thing, because everybody's given fantastic feedback. I think you've mentioned, you've kind of done a little bit here and there. One of the things that builds confidence in hiring someone is hearing what other people thought. So whether it's in the about section or you have another section that you add, anytime, especially if you're doing work for your friends, it's super easy to have them drop a little, quote. If you work with someone who you can't divulge the business, you can put something like satisfied customer, but getting some kind of accolade on a particular project and the effect that it had for their business is really helpful, because I know, everybody before they buy something, you always go and see the reviews, right? What did they say? So as you've kind of learned here, you are selling yourself. So the same theory will apply. If I can go and see that someone's had a very positive experience and you were able to help get them out of a jam by coming in and, pitching in and getting them over the finish line. If you had something that you were able to bring to the table on a specific tool or a skill set, you can even prompt them on what you want them to provide the recommendation on. So I would say definitely build that component out. And, I know that you've kind of heard it, but the overall visual, I love how soft everything is, but you do have to find the balance in that being able to be visible, and accessible for everyone. So I think, just to give you a little bit of feedback that we haven't shared yet, is any recommendations, especially if it's just, something short and sweet, if you can build that up, it gives you a greater bit of credibility in the big pool that you'll be swimming in. So I really liked your portfolio, though.
Thank you so much. For the group, do you think I should increase the font size by maybe 2 points? 3 points?
What is it right now?
I feel like it's at an 11 or 12.
I would probably change the text color first, darken it, and see what kind of change that makes, and then go from there. Because right now, for me, everybody else might be different. It's hard to kind of judge it just based off of how it is right now, because it's so light for me.
Yeah, and I'm thinking I can make like the box backgrounds more opaque rather than kind of see-through and transparent.
Yeah, and I would say usually I start off with the 12 for members.
Yeah, but I think the real thing that's hurting you is the color, and it almost looks like it is one of those that has a shadow on it too. So I would make sure it's a color that doesn't have that like shadow that creates the blurriness that almost makes it even harder to read with the soft background.
Okay. Do the titles, like the title sections, look good?
The buttons at the top, I would bold or darken. Those are the name is fine, Marisol, and then I think the title font family, like the size relative to the size of the body text, makes sense to me, but it still could be darkened.
Got it.
And you might want to take a contrast checker to it too. I don't know if Rebecca has one she recommends. I have some I use, but
yeah, I have a few that I use too. Like it just depends, because I feel like some of them give me different answers, and I'm like, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, sometimes I'll feel like it'll be like it's right, and I'm like, I still think it's hard. I don't know. There's something going on with my brain that's not working with it. So.
And I think the one more thing, just to wrap it up, Louis, before we end. So on each of your sections, Marisol, you had, which I love, you highlight the tools, you highlight the audience, and you have an objective. But what I want to look for is the solution, right? So I think that listing a solution, you can even do both. Put the goal, which is always important, but I want to draw my attention to the solution. So what did this do for the audience versus what you were trying to achieve? What did you actually achieve? So I think that that's just an easy addition for you to put in there as well. Okay, I swear that's it, Louis. That's all I have.
No, it's great. This is great. Let's see. Matthew's asking about suggestions on ATS test scanners.
Chomp Scan, ResiMatch.io, ChatGPT, honestly. But a good test of to test the formatting, just try copy and pasting the text and see how it pastes over into a plain text doc. But then in terms of actually scanning like the keyword matching, then there's a few. There's Jobalytics, there's jobscan.co, there's resimatch.io.
For the
Excellent. Thank you.
formatting, a weird quick tip from both of my recent job searches in 2022 and this year. I keep a Workday resume as well with a plain text that's like styled just for the Workday. It's still a little funky looking, so it's not the PDF I upload as my resume, but I do that first, and then it fills in all the stuff for me, and then I upload the real one. That was a recruiter friend suggested doing that because everybody hates Workday from that side.
Interesting. Very cool. Thank you. All right. Well, gosh, this was a lot of fun. Alison, I'm wondering, did you ever do anything like this at TPLD?
We did resume reviews, yeah, and we did asynchronous ones for a while too. Every Wednesday we used to do asynchronous ones where we do, that's what like I'm used to doing the looms and stuff. And we did a couple panels, but they were not posted. So they were always like semi-private. Like the people could come and attend, but like they weren't kept for posterity. Because it does take, kudos to these 5 brave folks. It takes really brave folks to be on a public one. I don't actually think anybody thinks anything bad of it. So I think it's like a bravery that's all internal based. I think employers would only be impressed. But I do think that it takes some bravery. And sometimes our folks weren't always, we wanted to be able to help a really wide group at TPLD, and a lot of people were not brave enough for that, I would say. I don't know if I would have been brave. It wasn't offered to me as an opportunity before I transitioned. I don't know if I would have been that brave at that point. I would probably let somebody look at my stuff now and be like, what do you think? But when you're trying to move, you're very vulnerable.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm really impressed with all the guests that we had. Let's see, Tania, I see that you have you're talking about how you use prompts from Teal and regular ChatGPT or Bing Copilot. Excellent. Okay. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the session. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to all our guests. Thanks, panel. You're just absolutely amazing. The feedback is incredible. I don't even know what to do with it. It's like it's just really, really good stuff. I think that there are so many people that could use your expertise that it seems like there should be some kind of a channel to the group of you somehow, since you've been so generous, because it really, really is amazing stuff. I know that it's going to help everybody who watches the recordings of these or attended today. And so thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and close everything out. Don't forget, we have Abby Stewart, who kind of helped build the program for this one and is also hosting a few sessions this week. She's going to be talking about her journey and sort of some really realistic things about what she's going through right now with her job search in L&D. That's what we're going to do to wrap up today. And so thanks again, everyone, for attending. And hopefully we'll see you in half an hour or so. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.